So, good day, sir. We are the group 3, and again, I was assigned to answer the first 3 questions by our group mates. And this is the topic of thermal oil. So, this is the question number 1. What is thermal oil? And mention the types of thermal oils. So, it is widely used to carry thermal energy in process heating, metalworking, and mechanic cooling application. It is a variety of application and industries where high temperatures are required. And there are types of thermal oils. First is the synthetics, second is the hot oils, and other including silicones. So for the next question, why thermal fluid heating system used on board of ships? It is because it can produce high temperature up to 300 degrees Celsius at atmospheric pressure, and the produced heat is transferred to the ship's heating consumer by means of transfer fluid, mostly minerals and synthetic oils. So for the next question, what are the advantages of thermal oil? Mention 5. So first is what I've mentioned earlier is that it can produce high temperature up to 300 degrees Celsius at atmospheric pressure. Next is that low maintenance cost, quiet in operation, easy to operate, no risk of corrosion, and no risk of freezing damage. So again, I will give it to Mr. Iligan the some of the question. So this is the first question that I will give to him. So it is 3 questions. The first is the discuss the graph of steam versus thermal oil. What is the purpose of expansion tank? And lastly, what is the purpose of 2 pipes or legs that run to an expansion tank? So that's it.
The question is given by Marcus Garces. So the first question is discuss the graph of steam versus thermal oil. So based on the graph, so as you can see, the blue is represent the steam and the red is represent for thermal oil. So based on my observation is that the steam is, or when the temperature of the steam is getting higher, also the pressure getting higher, or the pressure and temperature of a steam is directly proportional. So when the temperature increase, the pressure also increase for the steam. So in the other side, the red is represents the thermal oil. So as based on my observation, so the temperature of thermal oil is getting increasing, while the pressure is remain constant. So that's my observation for the graph of steam versus thermal oil. Question is, what is the main purpose of the expansion tank? The main purpose of the expansion tank is to allow some places for heat transfer fluid when heated to expand into, and when cold, a source to draw fluid from to keep the system full and to protect the piping system from exploding. So that is the purpose of the expansion tank. The temperature in the expansion tank is less than 140 degree Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius. The reason of this is to prevent oxidation with air inside the tank. So if then run to above 140 degree Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, you need to have or to apply nitrogen blanket. So the reason of this is to remove oxygen molecules and prevent oxidation. So number 6, um, what is the purpose of two pipes or legs that run into an expansion tank? So the purpose of that is that it prevents the thermal currents from running into the expansion tank and heating the fluid in that tank up. So bali iniingatan niya makapunta yung temperature or init sa loob ng expansion tank, at pag bumaba naman yung fluid na galing sa tank, pag dumaan dun sa pipe is pinapainit niya. So this is my question for Mr. Elino Stardo. First is, what is the purpose of dam cooler? Second is, what is the purpose of degasser? And last is, or third is, what is the purpose of centrifugal pump?
Good day, sir. I'm Elino Stardo, Jr. So, my question comes from Mr. Iligan, and this is my questions. What is the purpose of dam cooler? First, the dam cooler is considered as a heat exchanger in the system, for it has a cooling medium, which is seawater. And now, for its purpose of the dam cooler, since excessive energy is produced, therefore it exceeds the required energy needed by the consumers. Now, our dam cooler is responsible for reducing the energy content, leaving its energy to the required energy of the consumers as it passes through the dam cooler. For the second question, what is the purpose of degasser? So, the main purpose of degasser is to simply remove the gases from drilling fluid, which could otherwise form bubbles or even cause oxidation. And for the last question is, what is the purpose of centrifugal pump? So, the main purpose of centrifugal pump is to transfer fluids through an increase in pressure. Since a centrifugal pump are hydraulically operated machines, so one of its purpose is to transport fluids by the conversion of the rotational kinetic energy to the hydrodynamic energy of the fluid flow. And now my question to Mr. Idkas goes this way. So, what is temperature blocking vessel? Next is discuss the startup procedure. And lastly, discuss the shutdown procedure.
So I have 3 questions for the topic of thermal oil system, and this question came from Mr. Elino Stardo. So the first question is, what is the temperature blocking vessel? So it is a small buffer tank between the hot circulating fluid and the expansion tank, which we call the temperature blocking vessel. So as the system heats up, so the system liquid expansion flows from the top of the bottom of the temperature blocking vessel to the expansion tank. So the second question is discuss the startup procedure. So first is start the pump to get the fluid flowing to the system. Second, after you have good flow, apply the heat. So the heat applied in 20 Fahrenheit to 11 degrees Celsius and 25 Fahrenheit to 14 degrees Celsius until the heat transfer fluid gets the viscosity of 10 cp. The increment steps are done by taking 70 Fahrenheit to 21 degrees Celsius and increase the heat by 20 Fahrenheit to 11 degrees Celsius and let the system run until the temperature on heater is read 90 Fahrenheit to 32 degrees Celsius. And once your heat transfer fluid is 10 cp or less, you can dial the heater to your operating temperature. So the third question is discuss the shutdown procedure. So first is you must turn off the heater. Second is let the pump continue to circulate and heat transfer fluid remove any residual heat in the heater. So the reason for this is to make sure that when pump gets turned off, the residual heat in various component of the system does not thermally crack to the heat transfer fluid. So once the fluid once the temperature drops to the 200 Fahrenheit to 93 degrees Celsius, so the residual heat has been removed and you are safe to shut off the pump. So my question is for Mr. Winifred Holanda. So discuss the drain procedure. And second is why is the burner must be placed vertically. And third is explain the function of constant flow value.
Here are the questions from Mr. Ibkas. Number 1 question, discuss the drain procedure. So in draining procedure, first things first, shut your heat source off and let your pump continue to circulate the oil through the system. You need to remove all the residual heat from the system as well as let the oil cool down. Then once the oil is at the safe temperature to drain from your system, shut off the pump and allow fluid to stop circulating. If you have a nitrogen blanket on the expansion tank, then turn that off. If you have a high point vents, you can open them. Make note of all the positions of closed or partially closed valves or gates. Once you make note of all their positions, you can open them all up. Please do not forget the closed leg to the expansion tank. Attach your hoses to all the low point drains. In most cases, the low point drain will be at the pump and another at the process or the user. Use a secondary pump to pull the fluid out of the system and into either an empty drum or depending on the size of your system. Make sure that you label the containers as used heat transfer fluid. You do not want to accidentally put a drum of the used fluid in your system. When you think you have all the oil out of the system, allow the system to sit for 10 to 15 minutes and try pumping again. Sometimes it take some of the more viscous fluid to settle to the low points. The number 2 question from Mr. Ibkas is that why is the burner must be placed vertically? So the reason why the burner, or it is named root fire burner, it is placed vertically in order the heat that is burned can what you call that, can extend or can reach into its limit, because in some other designs the heat cannot reach its limit. So that's the reason why it is designed vertically. The last question from Mr. Ibkas is explain the function of constant flow valve. So the function of the constant flow valve is to keep the flow rate of the gases at constant value even when the supply or the load pressure changes. It adjusts and controls the volume, a flow of air within a pneumatic system. It also used to maintain preset flow rate in a line that develops primary or secondary pressure fluctuations.